Greetings, everyone. This is Dawn Boyani Sandberg from femtechonline.com, and I wanted to offer an audio journal and an update as to how the healing is going in my personal journey regarding being the adult child of a narcissistic dysfunctional family and spending my entire life seeking out different healing modalities to be able to recover. And I wanted to give you a few insights about what I've learned recently. And I wanted to say something that I'm finding to be so interesting is human dynamics and sort of pack mentality and behavior patterns. You'd think that every single family is different. And we have different causes and conditions, different generational histories, different amounts of children, no children, propensities of the, marital status, dealings with abuse in the family, unhealthy patterns. And what I'm finding is time and time again, unhealthy families will have very, very similar patterns, and they're almost formulaic. I think, the word narcissism is thrown around a lot as kind of a catch-all phrase for dysfunction, but there are many different primary personality disorders and family systems that organize a certain way. But what I've noticed is that the way that the families organize themselves socially, we do tend to have kind of a template of pack mentality, and we behave in a way that's very similar formulaically. I won't say this is true for all families, but I will say it's true for mine. And as I read about these things, I read about dysfunctional families, narcissistic families, internal family systems, trauma reenactment, and what I've recently been looking at is the family scapegoat. Families tend to organize themselves in the same way again and again and again if they're dysfunctional. So I just find it kind of interesting because you'd think that every family would be different, but that's not true. There are some regular patterns that we notice when there's disordered personalities, abuse, addiction, emotional, sexual violence, and how families cover that. My husband is from Sweden, and there's a film out. I believe it's called the Celebration, and and it's kind of an interesting film. I believe it was called The Celebration. It's kind of this dark family systems, holiday film. So what happens is, it's a big party of the patriarch of the family, his birthday. I don't want to spoil, so if you're going to see the Swedish movie, The Celebration, stop now. But it's subtitles, and so it's not in English. But basically, it's the patriarch's birthday, and all of it's his retirement. He's getting much older. I think he's in his 80s or something like that. And all of the family comes to visit. The dad and the mother are there. And during the dinner, this is the celebration. One of the sons stands up and says, "Dad, you sexually assaulted me." In front of the whole family, he finally confronts his dad. And I think that the dad was an assaulter for more than just him. He assaulted all the children. And during this confrontation, of course, you can gather it didn't go very well. The mother jumps up and defends the father, shuns the son, tells him that he's lying and she doesn't understand why he's doing this, and basically kicks him out of the room. So that's the premise of the celebration, was this son finally being brave enough to confront the family system. And sure enough, anyone that's bright enough that actually is asking for healing, accountability, transparency, and all that good stuff, the stuff that we know that happens when we begin to heal, they get shunned, counter-blamed, and kicked out. So there's the black sheep. And as far as sheep are concerned, there's that term, the black sheep of the family. And then there's the term, the scapegoat. So oftentimes what I've noticed is it's the child that actually is most vulnerable and that is actually really ethical and empathic and compassionate. That type of authentic presence, I think, really gets under the skin of the people that are trying to cover for a lot of dark shadow stuff or family secrets, abuse in the family. So they oftentimes in these dysfunctional families will choose one person out of the family, and it can be an extended family too. It's an unspoken agreement that goes on, oftentimes ever since the child is really young, that this one particular family member, could be a girl or boy, it's not particularly a gender thing, but this person gets dubbed subconsciously through this unspoken agreement as the harbinger or the garbage receptacle of all of the family shadow. It's a form of socialized bullying. I think it comes from our early pack mentality. And the basic premise that the term scapegoat came from the Torah in the Bible, Leviticus. There is a ceremony that occurs every year in order to cleanse the sins of the Israelites. They will take two sheep. One will be a blood sacrifice, and the other one, the priest will lay his hands on the head, and supposedly that sheep would assume energetically all of the sins of the people, and then that particular sheep gets sent out away from the village. It doesn't get killed, but it's sent away. So it's just kind of this symbolic offering to God or to that which is divine, that the people would very much like to be unburdened from their sins. So you have one particular goat that is that embodies and bears the burden, energetic, emotional burden, the spiritual burden of all these sins, so that people can feel better about themselves and be cleansed. So there you get the scapegoat. And a lot of dysfunctional, I would say almost all dysfunctional families that I've ever seen as a wellness coach and when I've been studying over the years will have this scapegoat. Sometimes that scapegoat will also be like in that film, The Celebration, the one that was abused, either physically, emotionally, or sexually. Sometimes it goes the other way too. I've also seen them do a mixture of a scapegoat and a golden child, where the person is, I've seen this in some of our spiritual communities, the person is neglected, sort of hated, ignored, and abused, and exalted at the same time. So that's actually, from what I've seen, the birth of a narcissistic personality disorder. Someone that feels really privileged and bratty and entitled and kind of holier than everyone and better than everyone. They're born with the silver spoon in their mouth. But fundamentally, there's a emotional void or emotional damage or abuse or brokenness. So they actually have tremendously low self-esteem, if not self-hatred and loathing and insecurity. And then they try to overcompensate by, being really spiritual or holy or accomplished or over-accomplished. So you get this kind of, we've seen it with our former president, this kind of ugly, energy of entitlement and privileged, but this depravity of spirit and internal brokenness. So that's narcissism, malignant narcissism. And sometimes that actually can be a profile of a scapegoated child. It's kind of a weird thing. But if it's just a pure scapegoat and it's not the narcissistic type, there are very specific personality traits and woundedness that come from scapegoats. It's very, very unhealthy and life-damaging, soul-crushing, curse to be the scapegoat in a family system. And I happen to be one. So I can tell firsthand what that's been like for my entire life. It's basically been my life karma, what defines me up until now. Now I consider myself a survivor of dysfunctional family systems and generational abuse. The type of dysfunction of my family, as far as I can see back, it's gone on for 3 or 4 generations, and that's just from the reports of people that are still alive. So it's a really long-standing thing that can be passed on from generation to generation. And with all the work that I've done ardently all my life of trying to heal and going into therapy and journaling and being involved with Buddhism, I've tried everything in my power to not impart that to my child and to my family. And I think I've done a pretty good job. So that's the best we can do is not necessarily completely heal everything in the life, but you want to stop the patterns enough so you don't impart that to the next generation. You don't hurt your children. So that is healing, and that is breaking the cycle of this generational abuse. And that, I mean, I consider my life already a success that my daughter's doing well and was never scapegoated, was never physically or sexually abused. So I consider that I'm so grateful that I found people in my life that have helped me to heal and believed that I could. But then there's also been a recurrence of some of those patterns too, and I wanted to talk to you about that. So my life, I started out being unwanted. My mother, it was a teenage pregnancy, and I remember being really young. I was told by my mother, like to my face, "I wish I had never had you." And you know, I was never sexually abused, thank God. But I was physically abused by both my mother and my father, neglected in the crib. And then also I went to a pretty rough school system on the East Coast. And then the kids, we didn't have anti-bullying laws back then. So I was like targeted in the schoolyard, and I was hit and bullied and made fun of all my life. So, you know, it felt to me that I mean, I basically cried every single day of my childhood. It was really, really sad. And my home didn't feel, you know, loving and supportive. It felt so sad. And, you know, and then I went to school and I was sad. And I couldn't understand, like, why did kids always bully me? I was like a sweet little girl. I was really cute. I had like curly, sort of reddish, brown hair and very compassionate. I like pet my cats. Like, I was not a hellion. I wasn't mean. And I couldn't understand why kids were so mean. Like, it didn't dawn upon me that you would target a vulnerable person. But I always got targeted. I got beat up so many times. I was a girl, and girls on girls would beat each other up where I came from. And, you know, I didn't understand, like, what was it about me that people would target? You know, what, like, why? You know, I didn't understand it. I remember one time I was being beaten up in the schoolyard, and I just didn't understand. Some girl came up to me and just slapped me on the face. I think I was like 6 years old. And I just kneeled in the schoolyard and held my face and just cried. But it wasn't so much that I was crying because the slap hurt. I was just crying. It was almost existential back then. Like, how can people be such bullies? How can they be so cruel? And I remember even the teacher, like, everyone gathered around me as I was holding my face. And I just looked up, and and the girl that slapped me, I was crying so hard, you know. I could see her face kind of soften, and it made her feel bad. And but I can tell now in retrospect, now that I'm you know, how many years later, I'm 53, I look back and I can see that if you were the family scapegoat and you were abused and neglected and unwanted, that it's unspoken. You walk into another environment, a school system or another community, and somehow just how your gestalt um, will, you will have the archetype of being the scapegoat, and there's a kind of unspoken sort of kick me sign on your head. You take that on. You're like, okay, I am the person that won't fight back. I am the person that you can project all of your hostility, hatred on, and you can, believe that I am willing to take on the darkest part within you. And so, of course, then I would get beat up or assaulted or tripped or teased. So it was just like my life karma all my life. So, I tried everything. I mean, my whole entire premise of when I was, 18, I got involved with this co-op, and I got involved with organic foods and meditation. And I came out to Naropa, got involved with Tibetan Buddhism. All of my efforts were basically to heal my family of origin. I think that the original goal was to make it right with them. It wasn't to heal me. It was I was going to fix them and then have a happy family. Then if I learned about meditation, compassion, self-awareness, then I could fix my family system. So that was my goal from the age of 19 up until this year. So, I mean, we're talking like 37 years of effort and hundreds of thousands of dollars in work and effort. I bought a retreat house in Crestone. Everything was to be able to heal my family system. And finally, I realized that certain types of family disorders, and especially if you're the scapegoat, those types of personalities, they depend upon having a target of blame. So they don't want you to heal. They don't want to all of a sudden have this big happy family where we love each other in a healthy and respectful way. We overcome toxic patterns. We have accountability, and we all hang out and have, Christmas together. That's not what they want. I realized that the family, if you've got disordered people, cluster B disorders, something like, borderlines, narcissists, malignant narcissists, golden child, they all get together, and they, for an entire lifetime, will target that one person. And that actually kind of energetically absolves them. They actually feel better that they hate you, because they get to unburden themselves and have you be, hands on the top of the goat. You're the person that will make them feel better about the energetic, emotional, spiritual crimes they've committed by constantly having hatred and vitriol towards you. So they want you in their lives to dump on. So the difficult task of a scapegoated child who becomes an adult that wants to heal is first and foremost to be aware of this pattern. And I think the very first thing is that to go back into that family system and ask them for healing and accountability, as far as I have seen, is an untenable task, and it's a waste of time. So let me save you many years, because I've spent so much money and so much time trying to heal an unhealthy family system, and they've actually just gotten worse. The more that I heal, the more pissed off they get, the more vitriol. And I've been actually physically assaulted the last time I was 36. I mean, they actually will run across the room and punch me. I mean, these people are, one of my counselors said that my family is actually deranged. And when that's your only family, you don't know that it's unhealthy. You think, oh my God, well, I am a bad kid. I do deserve to be hit. What was I doing being born? Why, you start to internalize the fact that you're bad, or you're evil, or you're unwanted, and that there's this unspoken agreement now that you have with everybody that that you're fundamentally flawed. So your family has no interest in healing this with you. They need you. They need you to dump on. That's how their self-esteem stays intact. Because if they didn't have you, they would actually be faced with themselves and have to be accountable for all of the hurtful things they've done throughout the years, and they don't want that. So you have to understand they're not interested in healing. So it's worked for me. I can't speak, for everyone, to have extremely limited contact. And as of now, I've gone into no contact with this part of my family of origin. Now, I'm lucky I have another side of my family from another parent who actually are really loving. And since I've set a boundary and I'm in no contact with the family that scapegoated me, that's given me more time to spend with family members that are really loving. So I'm really happy about that. And I wanted to tell you also that if you were a scapegoated child, abused from your family of origin, it is very, very common, of course, to recreate that pattern. It's called trauma reenactment. And you will keep on recreating that imprint of you being a scapegoat wherever you go. It happens in relationships, happens in families, and it unfortunately happened again with my Buddhist communities that I've been involved with. And I was with one for many, many years. And because of, organizationally, some of these unhealthy things that we're talking about became part of the organization. It's failing right now. And I've tried to go into other Buddhist communities, but I'm seeing the same type of patterns. So I will own that I come into it with the imprint of being a scapegoat. And sure enough, I get targeted and have to leave. But I will say also that it's not only me. Um, I've sought out communities and organizations that have within them the same types of familial structural violence that I was born with, where you have a person, who everyone has to do whatever they say. And a lot of people who enable that person. And then what was happening behind the scenes is the outer edifice of that looks benevolent, like, oh, we're all meditating, we're receiving great teachings and empowerments, and we're super spiritual and really holy, and we're noble birth and all this kind of good feeling stuff. But underneath the scenes, time and time again, with a lot of these teachers, is a pretty dystopian, dysfunctional community of people who were broken like me, who all come in and believe that someone's going to make our lives better. So right then and there, you take broken people and then you believe that this person in charge, a spiritual holy person, a priest-like person, is going to fix all your problems. That sort of inflames the fire of codependency, and then that person benefits because they get a community, they get financially supported, and they get to order everybody around. So I'm finding time and time again in these organizations, what would happen is I would join them as an adult survivor, a broken person who's codependent and trying to heal, give all of my power and hope and strength away to this person who they say is divine, who's going to help you, but then like not really be making much spiritual progress because you've sort of transferred the source of healing outside yourself, which is fundamental codependency. And then everyone around tries to social climb. A lot of them are damaged, narcissistic, or codependent people. And so behind the scenes, in these cult-like organizations or spiritual groups or my Buddhist community, the dynamic of the community is not healthy. And we're not allowed to talk about that. We're not allowed to learn, grow, evolve. We have vows that in our Tibetan Tantric Buddhist community that you're supposed to see the leader, no matter who they are, having examined them for 3 years. Once having examined them, they're supposed to be 100% pure. Everything they do is pure. All of the people within the community you're supposed to perceive as pure. And God forbid there happen to be any problems, conflict, harm, sexual abuse, emotional violence, backstabbing, social climbing, anything that could come up, we are not allowed to talk about. So you're, you know, you've taken a vow to, have to, be silent and never discuss these things. So I would say from the get-go, my connection with these communities, the relationship with them, was a reflection and a recreation of my family of origin, where there's codependency, enabling, um, you know, having a strong personality, um, taking orders from that person and having us acquiesce, but never really making any spiritual progress or healing. So I did everything that they said. I went on these month-long meditation retreats, then 3-month-long meditation retreats, then seminary and empowerments, and throwing my body to the ground 100,000 times and doing mandalas and buying all this colorful stuff, and then 35 years later, still not really being that spiritually accomplished. And then, now that some of these communities, after the Me Too movement and COVID, they're actually failing, I would say not only not accomplished, but I would say feeling that I wasted a lot of time, that I missed the point of what it was to be a Buddhist or what the Buddha ever wanted. And, you know, it continued to propagate, um, the mind looking outward for a savior, and unhealthy, uh, time wasting, complex vows, practices, and, not only not being accomplished, but feeling that I've actually created more karma of harm, spiritually, and, to my heart. After these communities, some of them have begun to fail or are failing right now. They would tell us that, well, if your teacher ever leaves, or if you ever have a bad thought or anything, you're going to go to hell. So I had to now go back into counseling with that same exact impression of me being the scapegoat. Now all of a sudden, because of my tantric vows, they tell you you're going to go to hell. So I'm like, okay, now I'm going to hell. I have to go into therapy to heal from that. So it's just been not something. My connection with my Tibetan Buddhist community hasn't brought on insight and healing. It's brought on trauma and more of a, self-doubt. I've lost a lot of friends. They've actually literally called me demon as I've, seen through some of these patterns that are unhealthy. They've shunned me. I've been yelled at. I have been, pretty much consistently scapegoated because these men don't want to look at themselves, and some women too. And I can see that pattern clearly because I know it. I was raised by these kind of people. So I'm sort of like a dysfunctional family or dysfunctional systems expert. I have a serious sensor, and, I can feel when someone is, fundamentally unkind but acting kind, disingenuous, narcissistic, prone to abusing children or women. And I don't take it too lightly. Yeah, I get triggered. So I guess I own the fact that I come from trauma. Then when I see those patterns in human communities, again, especially these spiritual communities or family systems, I have a strong sensitivity for it. And it kind of, the more healed that I get, the more that I want to, bring awareness to that. So I talk about it. I do blogs. I try to, speak to my teachers, my friends, everyone I know, anyone that will listen, about, what is unhealthy, what is making us not really heal, what is making us foster codependency, the feeling of putting our power into someone else that disempowers us, life wasting things, and things that ultimately are, environments and milieus that house, abuse patterns. So I'm kind of like not into that, you know. And the thing is what I've noticed is that the more that I heal, the more that I speak out in an authentic way, and the more that people that want to continue these patterns of narcissism, of disordered personalities, of unhealthy structurally violent environments, or family systems, they really hate me. Like they hated me at first, then they really hate me. So I guess it's my cross to bear to be the scapegoat emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. I think people have even done, black magic ceremonies against me to try to silence me because I know their secrets and they don't want people to know them. So that's kind of how it works to bear the burden of being the scapegoat in a life. You know, I know it helped me to set a complete boundary and walk away from my family of origin. I haven't done that yet with my Buddhist community or spiritual communities. I'm still trying to have them see the patterns. Like I still have hope for them where I don't have hope for my family, but it's not going very well. I speak in an authentic way, especially when I see these men in power doing harm, creating codependency, and demonizing me, and it just isn't a great thing. So I try really hard to heal it, but it just makes me a pariah or a scapegoat or a demon. They call me all kinds of names. So I kind of get it. I'm trying to kind of rock my karma and own my shadow and my light simultaneously. Most likely, if I can't bring light to any of these patterns and my friends are not interested in true enlightenment, true waking up and healing and growing and reforming our community, then probably I will have to walk away at some point. And maybe that will be a huge testament to my healing where I get too healthy to be around an unhealthy environment. So, to be continued. I'm not sure where the path will lead me, but I can see for now um, the new insight of this year is acknowledging that there's a recurring pattern in my mind stream. They call it the Alya, or the kind of storehouse of your consciousness, that I keep on recreating that pattern of being a scapegoat kind of wherever I walk. And it's an unspoken, designation, and I can see where it comes from, and I can see where my motivation is, why I try to heal unhealthy family systems, and oftentimes how futile that is. So I will sign off here, and I would love to continue to share with you what I learned as I continue this rigorous and really sometimes painful healing journey. And I wish you all the best. And I do believe that knowledge is power. And the more really deeply we can dig into, our deepest, the architecture of our psyche, of our emotional patterning. We may not be able to heal completely in a life, but we can at least have a sense of who we are, and then act in our lives rather than react. So I do think healing is possible through self-awareness, honesty, and tenacious effort. Anyway, all love and all well wishes to everyone.